Hi everyone, welcome back to my bodega. In this episode, I'm going to correct myself from my first video that I presented last week. In that video, I said that when you open a bottle of wine, after you uncork it, you let it breathe for 5 to 10 minutes, for a younger wine, and then you drink it afterwards. I also said in that video that for older wines, you should let it breathe longer. That is incorrect. So I'm here to let you better understand what it means to let your wine breathe, why you do it, and then I'm also going to offer some tips on how to let your wine breathe properly and get the best out of your wine. So we're going to talk about wine and letting it breathe, and we're also going to reveal the mystery wine for tonight. So what does it mean to let your wine breathe, and why do you do it? Think of yourself in the morning. You've just been through a night's sleep, hopefully a good night's sleep, and you awaken and you do a little stretching, your legs, your arms, kind of to get yourself acclimated from that position you've been in for maybe the last hour. Kind of lets the oxygen get into your body, your muscles stretch. Wine bottles are kind of the same way. The wine itself has been inside the bottle for a long time, perhaps, and letting it breathe actually lets the air get to it and release some of the aroma and some of the taste. So with various wines, you want to let that air penetrate the wine, the liquid, and give it some time to kind of stretch out a little bit and sort of express itself. So in this video, what we're going to talk about is the various ways to let your wine breathe. Now, in my first video, I said, hey, uncork it, let it sit there for 5 to 10 minutes, and then pour it. Well, that is downright wrong. And then I also said to, for older wines, to let it sit there longer. That's also downright wrong. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about various ways to let your wine breathe properly, and also to unveil the mystery wine for today. As we have just announced, tonight's mystery wine is Finca La Mata. Finca La Mata in Spanish basically means the farm La Mata. And Finca La Mata comes from the Spanish region Ribera del Duero, which we will talk about in a different episode. I've had it before, it's a pretty good wine. But in this episode, we're going to talk about letting your wine breathe. So I'm just going to demonstrate with the bottle and these instruments here various methods to let your wine breathe. Now, typically you uncork your wine, and if you want to just let it sit in the bottle, that's fine. Typically you want to give it 45 minutes to an hour to let it breathe. Now, knowing that, just know that there's only so much of the wine that's actually exposed to the air. So 45 minutes to an hour is probably the minimum amount you want to do for a wine of this age. This is 2016. And so that's probably a decent amount of time to let it breathe. Second thing you can do is you can decant it. This here is a decanter. Now you can tell that the broader base of the decanter is a little unusual. There's a good reason for that. Decanters typically are a little broader on the base because that allows more of the wine itself to be exposed to the air and the oxygen. So whereas if you let it breathe inside the bottle, up until you've uncorked it, it only had this much space to sort of breathe. When you uncork it, the air kind of comes in, but you only have this much surface area. A decanter, being broader at the base, allows more of the wine to get exposed to the air and therefore release more of the flavor and the aroma that you look for in a good wine. Now another way to do it, some restaurants do this I think, is you double decant. And double decant means that you pour the wine in the decanter, then you actually pour it back into the bottle. So during that process, you've allowed a lot of the wine to go into the decanter, therefore exposing it to the air. Then you're doing it again, but back into the bottle. This allows them to have the wine at the ready to serve to customers coming in. And therefore it's fairly ready to be consumed at its most potent level. Now, many of you have probably seen people take a little bit of wine in their glass and kind of swish it around. That is another form of letting the wine breathe. Typically, a little bit of wine is there just to allow the customer to taste the wine. Swishing it around kind of gives it a little bit of exercise, a little motion, and therefore more oxygen gets to it. Afterwards, they would plunge their nose into the glass a little bit and soak up the aroma. And typically a nice, beautiful bouquet of flavors and scents and all kinds of wonderful things come into the nostrils, and you really get a sense of what that wine's about. That's the hope anyway. There are some times when you don't really like the flavor or the aroma of the wine, and you might have to say something to the waiter, but let's not go down that road. So we've talked about decanting, double decanting, swishing it around in your glass, and as you can see, I have this little device here. This is an aerator. Another way you can allow the wine to sort of absorb the air on the outside is to pour it through this. This has little cylindrical tubes going in so that when the wine goes in and filters through, it catches up or grabs up some air. So we basically do it like so. And you might hear some kind of like funny sound coming out of this thing, but this is a really good instrument as well. So those are some ways to let the wine breathe and allow it to sort of stretch its muscles and absorb the air and the oxygen into its various liquid parts, we'll say, and give you a better drinking experience. And that's, after all, what we're looking for. We're looking for the better drinking experience for a glass of red wine. So now that I've described to you all the different methods that are, fairly common to let your wine breathe, I'm going to go ahead and open this bottle up, and I'm going to demonstrate a few of the things that I've just talked about. What we're going to do is we're going to decant this. So here's our decanter. This is not only a good way to aerate your wine and let it breathe, but it gives a nice presentation value in this beautiful decanter piece. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to pour a little bit in here, and then we're going to swish. And one thing to notice when you're swishing the wine around the glass, sometimes there are various patterns of wine sort of falling from the edges. We're going to talk about that in a different episode, because that means something, and it's probably something you ought to be aware of. Really nice aroma. Pretty nice taste. Finally, we'll go ahead and just demonstrate this guy. You can see the bubbles indicate that there's some oxygen getting to the wine. Nice quality to the aroma and the flavor, and hence another way that we can let our wine breathe. So, those are some of the ways that you can let your wine breathe and pull out that aroma and that flavor that you're looking for in your wine. And so the next thing will be to consume the wine. Okay, so we've let a little time go by. The wine is in the decanter. Poured a little bit in here. Let a little time go by, let the aeration take its course. So now it's time to soak up the aroma. Pretty nice. Not sweet like the previous one. I think it's a little less sweet. I would say it's on the fruitier side, but not in an obvious way. A really nice aroma. Color-wise, it's about like the other one. The other one being the Coppola. You know, it's got a little light coming through. It's not super dark, but not super light. So really nice balance there. So let's go ahead and taste it. Very similar to the other one in terms of quality, in terms of tasteability. I think this would go with a good steak anytime, and it always goes with my typical favorite, bread and cheese, maybe a nice blue cheese. I'd say 6.5, 7 is probably a good rating. A really nice flavor, and again, this was probably about $15 to $16, and very enjoyable, and so I recommend this one as well. So let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. We'll just say this is a really nice wine, and we've talked about aeration and breathing, and we hope to see you back for another episode of the Wine Corner at My Bodega.